Um, my topic that I'm interested to talk today is related to microplastics and lung. I think very emerging concern for many of us, and I'm sure that you heard concerns at this point, how we can learn more, and that's gonna be whole aim for my presentation today. Next slide, please. I have no conflict of interest about this presentation. Next one. Learning objectives for this talk divided to understanding source of exposure, review evidence on lung deposition of microplastics, explore biologic or mechanism underlying after exposure, and identifying risk gaps that are exist at this point. Next one. So what are microplastics? Let's start with definition as the first place, and understanding that plastic particles, they are so small, tiny right now almost everywhere, and size matters for their definition. Although this definition is not perfect in any term at this point, and we adopted from other particle matters, particularly dust matters, that's I'm not sure 100% I agree with that at this point, but based off definition, what we call as microplastics means that every particles with plastic with a size less than 5 micron, and then if it is more than 25, call it macroplastics, and mesoplastics, something between them. And the source basically is almost everything, whatever that we produce and use it and discarded in community, in environment, in oceans, on air, you can find it out, we're gonna have microplastics. And there is no really any place around our planet that you cannot find microplastics. The picture that I put here basically generated by our lab, and this is what we got from lung people without any underlying conditions. Next one, please. All right, so why we are defining based on 1 to 5, 1 microns to 5 millimeter, and the microns that I said for the 10 microns is my major concern. Basically, we are talking about the size can get inside the lung and end or terminal bronchi, as well as alveoli. And the size, whenever you're talking about less than 1 micron, you're talking about nanoparticles or nanoplastics that they can go and get into a blood system and circulate for entire body. That is major concern that we have in many conditions at this point. Next one. So here you can find it out in the bottom. I cannot really make closer and show you, but you can find it out that we have 4 different pictures, some of them needle shape that is number D, or that microplastics that usually can go with airflow to the terminal, even with a good length and the size. And then some others, they are very cubic shape, and those they are not really getting end except the size is very tiny. But another very important and major reason for this slide is we have primary and secondary microplastics. And what secondary means? Whenever that in the environment, we just threw out our container of water, that plastic gradually is gonna be making so small, tiny particles that's gonna get inside the body that a little bit later on, I'm gonna show you those pictures too. Next one, please. What is magnitude of the problem? Everything in medicine, we talk about magnitude of the issue. Here is unbelievable high. At this point, every year we produce 46 million metric tons of microplastics. That expectation for 2050 or projection is going to be more than double and end to 1.1 billion metric tons, and all of them going to be environment. So basically what we are doing at this point, I'm not sure that we understand magnitude of the danger that we are facing with. Next one. So how that works and how that's going to reach the lung? Is there any evidence that we inhale them? Yeah, there are papers that you can find out. I cited for you over there, and you can see that every year we get, as average, 22 million microplastics inside of a lung. That means huge number of microplastics. Air, almost every part in United States, every part in Europe that the studying done, we can find out microplastics on air. And as average is almost 5,700 particles per cubic meter air that we are breathing in. And source basically everything. Many synthetic, particularly clothes that we have and fibers produced every day in our houses, that probably concentration is higher than what we're going to get from outside. Next one. And it's not just lung. Microplastics can be ingested. We can get inside our GI system from different sources. Fish that everyone believes is a great source and healthy food, actually at this point is one of the source for major microplastics that you can get inside your GI. Salt and drinking waters, particularly that we want to be picky and every single one get a plastic container with water, you are getting a lot of those microplastics inside your GI. And respiratory, obviously, as we discussed, microplastics and different sizes, even macroplastics getting inside our lungs. And even for people that they are using for cosmetic and skin care, microplastics getting inside and going to be absorbed in the body. Next one, please. Inside the lung, base of information for particle matters, we learn that whenever that size is more than 10 micron, going to stay in the upper or large airways. Although this is true for dust, for microplastic is not true, and I'm going to show you some pictures later on. The size, whenever reach to less than 10, we believe that going to get in bronchial tree, particularly reaching to bronchioles on a small bronchial tubes there. And in alveoli, whenever that we are talking about less than 1 micron, then it's going to change in circulation and entire body going to be actually engaged with that. New study published last year in New England Journal showing that almost more than 60% of atriums or any atherosclerosis in carotid artery being actually contaminated with microplastics. Microplastics in brain, in vascular, in the heart is a major concern at this point. Another one. What determines, what factors going to dictate that what part of the lung those microplastics going to sit? Main difference between microplastics with other particle matters actually sitting in the top one, properties. So plastic is actually needle shaped, is very tiny in diameter, in length is bigger, but in the same time is very light. So airflow just move them in the end part of the lung and damage it. That for other particles, we don't have that property. Anatomy in the lung is important. Any disformity in the chest cavity matters, and health status, underlying condition like COPD, bronchiectasis, asthma matters, and breathing pattern actually is another factor. Some people that breathing from nose to mouth, they have different concentration of microplastics inside lungs. Next one. So whatever that this position gonna happen, how that gonna affect the different barriers in the lung as well as in the brain and others is very important topic. Just I want to bring this question for you that we need to think about. And in few other slides, I'm going to a little bit dig it more. Next one. Another problem that we do have with microplastics and particle matters in general is Trojan horse mechanism. Means what? Means that whenever they are flying on air or water, they can absorb chemicals and they can absorb viruses, bacteria, fungi. And after that, gonna just stay in the lung and stay for such a long time and make it a release of toxins and infection cause on it. Next one. When we are talking about microplastics, literally at this point, we don't have that many known. We can detect maybe 6, 7 of them nicely, like PE, like PP, like PS or PET, but many of those cannot be detected. For the first study that we have done, we find it out in the lung 46 different types of microplastics that many of them we could not recognize and detected that what's going to be chemical structure of it. Next one. Interaction, how that going to happen? Oh, at this point, in a vitro study showing that microplastics can get into epithelial cells, macrophages, and activate inflammatory response on it. Looks like that there are some evidence of DNA damage after happening and exposure of those microplastics. Because of time, I don't want to go in detail, but at least understanding that interaction between microplastics and epithelial cells and immune cells is documented at this point. Next one. Oxidative stress and inflammatory cascade is a part of what we are talking about. Rust generation and first part of cytokine production, starting from epithelial cells, is something that we can talk about. And then next step is chronic inflammation that can cause in chronic lung disease. Next one. Here you can see kind of graphic how immune cells, alveolar macrophages, epithelial cells can be engaged, and how really different parts of inflammatory response, even in vivo, a small animal, being studied and confirmed that basically is associated with a different inflammatory response on it. Next one. So besides of asthma exacerbation and COPD exacerbation and progression, we have pulmonary fibrosis. That is a big concern for microplastics, particularly in a specialty that I do work. And lung cancer is what for that. We'll a little bit work on it that I would be more than happy to share unpublished data on this. Next one. PFTs or lung function can be affected. As we discussed, any change in bronchial tree or interstitial lung disease can change our PFTs. That is obstructive or restrictive defect in different type of severity of condition. Next one. The question is, if you have microplastic in lungs, how long gonna take time to end up to poor outcome? Usually subclinical phase is gonna take almost 10 years. And then between 10 and 20, you have early pathology or physiopathology changes. And then after 20 years, you're gonna have significant presentation, including cancer and interstitial lung disease. Next one. High risk. Who is high risk in this? Obviously, like many type of environmental conditions, we are concerned about pediatrics, elderly population, and those that they have underlying condition in the lung and other organs. Next one. People that been working in industries that a lot of exposure with microplastics gonna happen. Obviously, there are another group that's significantly exposed as occupational lung disease. Next one. We don't know many things about microplastics and effect on health. Even we don't know that we don't know. There are so many unknown regarding how that's going to affect, how going to be outcome, and what we need to do for those microparticles inside our lung and how we can resolve them. Many challenges and limitations at this point that we are facing with. Next one. As I mentioned, in vitro studies, animal studies, we have some human biomonitoring in occupational medicine and big epidemiologic research in the term of those patients that work in those companies for others. Next one. Hossein John, I'm done with my time. All right. So
Yes, please. We are at the end. A few more minutes, we are done with yours. So 1 or 2 minutes,
okay.
that would be great.
And
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for letting me know. Go another one. Just show you one. Not here. Next one. So lung cancer and microplastic. This is what for that our team done. Go next one. We isolated from 34 lung tissue samples, all of them with microplastics. And now you can see it, the real one, and the number F is the one that you can see secondary microplastics from environment inside the lung. And next one. And when we compare it between normal and cancer patients, we find it out that those patients with lung cancer, they have higher concentration of microplastics compared to control persons. Next one. And thank you very much.